do it. For 18 years. Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the students are back to school. We have some helpful hints. It's called our Popular Financial Literacy Update. And then our business panel will join us. Fred Anton and Gene Barr will catch up on all things Harrisburg. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, at this taping, we have no budget. We're going to check in with Gene and Fred in a few minutes and see what's going on in Harrisburg, I should say the state capital. But first, financial literacy update. The students are soon to return to school. The summer is moving all too fast. Joining me, as often is the case, is Mike Wishnow. He's the Senior VP from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, and Kathleen Fey. She's the Executive Director of the Credit Union Foundation. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, let's get into some of this, and I want to talk about teenagers. All right, teenagers, how much they spend, what their credit cards are like, and what parents should be concerned about. So, Kathleen, I'll start with you. Let's talk about how much they spend. I didn't realize from this report you provided how much they spend.
Yes, $170 billion.
That's with a B. Go ahead.
With the B, yes. $170 billion is being spent by teenagers, and unfortunately, many of them have absolutely no idea what they're doing in terms of that spending, in making good choices. And many of them also have credit cards. I never had a credit card until I was well over 18.
And we won't get into iPhones where 5- and 6-year-olds have iPhones and taking pictures and go ahead. Finish your thoughts.
So because of this, it's a huge population that is spending right now and doing it in some cases blindly.
Yeah.
And so the importance of educating students, even preteen and younger, about saving and about making good decisions in what they're buying and about credit and how that can stay with you for a very long time if you make bad decisions.
Now, and most young folks get their financial education from their parents, right?
Correct. And, frankly, we as parents do varying levels of jobs in mentoring our children.
Sure.
Some parents do very, very well.
Yeah. And some don't, let's be honest.
Really, they're going to mimic your behavior. So if you're living beyond your means, unfortunately, you're sort of teaching them bad habits, even though you probably don't mean to.
But they want to learn, according to your studies, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like young folks say, well, don't teach me about this, right?
Right. What's interesting is the family finances are often a taboo subject in the household.
Yeah.
People will talk to their kids about sex. They won't talk to their kids about money. So many families, most families, frankly, they don't share what they're actually spending. They don't share the family budget with their children. And the children really,
I never did, by the way.
Yeah.
I think I taught a little bit about financial education, but I never said, this is what I have in my pension plan, this is what I make. I just, not something I ever thought
frankly,
of doing.
You probably don't want them telling their friends and telling their friends' parents. But, those kinds of conversations are really very important.
Yeah. All right. So here's what happens in college. I've been a college professor my whole adult life. I go in the first day, and in some cases I see a stand here, a stand there, a stand there, and sign up and get your credit card, right?
Exactly.
So I got that about right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not dissing, credit cards. That's fine. We all want people to learn how to use them, but that's where they get their credit cards for the first time. Most young people, right?
Yes, many of them do, if they haven't already gotten one in high school. But yes, and with absolutely no preparation for being able to know how to use that.
Yeah. And
it really can cause such problems for such a long time down the road because they don't know what they're doing with it.
All right, we're talking about the obvious as young folks begin to go back to school. We're going to get into some other details about this. What should parents be doing? We're going to talk about a survey that was done. We'll be back with that and more after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, well, the school of hard knocks, or trial and error in many cases. I'm talking with Kathleen Fey and Mike Wishnow. We're getting the do's and the don'ts about young folks going back to school, credit cards, debt, all of that situation. All right, Michael, National Jumpstart Coalition survey of high school students. What do they say?
Well, basically, the high school students do really poorly on a test that Jumpstart administers every 3 years.
Is this about financial literacy?
On financial literacy, right. They typically get D's and F's.
Gee.
Now, the other thing that they say is they want more curriculum. They want more knowledge.
Right.
Only about 10% of Pennsylvania's 500 schools have a standalone financial literacy course as a requirement for graduation.
Right.
Probably 100 or so more have electives that some of the kids can take.
And you're doing more and more work. Every time we have a conversation about this, you're increasing the number of relationships you have with school districts to, work on this, correct?
Absolutely, through the foundation.
Yeah.
And
how many are you up to? I'm going to put you on the spot.
285.
See, she knew right away, right? I should have known better to ask that question. All right, here's something that actually stunned me from the Sallie Mae survey of college students. We often hear about the debt from tuitions and the debt from other college expenses into, I think the average is something like 25 or 30,000 overall. But seniors graduated from college, this is the Sallie Mae survey, with an average credit card debt of more than $4,100 according to this survey. I mean, that's a lot of money for somebody, in many cases, folks who don't have a job yet.
Right, or moving into an entry-level position where they're not going to see their primary earnings for 10 years, maybe, and they're already starting out behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, 1 out of 5 with a credit card balance more than $7,000. So you're trying to make a credit card payment, you look for a job, or this is, but yet freshmen even are getting into this credit card and the debt, right, Michael?
Well, sure. When you start out in life and you have the school loans, you have the credit card debt, you probably have to have a car payment on a used vehicle. You're trying to make your first rent payment. It's no wonder, quite frankly, more of our kids are moving back home.
Right.
Kathleen, we see it all the time when we're out there in the credit unions trying to teach financial education to that cohort, right?
And are you dealing with credit unions? I presume banks go through the same thing, where you've got young folks who aren't paying their credit cards, and you have to sort of deal with that. I mean, is that fairly common, or is that something that the credit cards do and not banks and credit unions?
Well, credit unions generally will work with their members. So if somebody comes in, particularly a young person, and says, look, here's my situation.
And they have a credit card.
And they have a credit card. They may refinance that credit card at a lower percentage rate, or they'll try and get them on a path that they can see the end of the debt.
Ideally, what we want to happen is to educate them prior to getting into that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I think
that's what this education is all about.
It really is.
So they don't end up with somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000. And I presume there are students who have higher debt than even the $7,000. And basically, before I let you go, your argument is, we'll go through what needs to be done in advance of all this. Give me 3 or 4 things. What should happen? Education in schools? Go ahead.
Absolutely, education in schools. And not just education, but experiencing it, actually hands-on learning about that. learning at home as well. The real life, what's going on in the home, what can we afford, what can we not afford.
Yeah.
And then actually putting into practice and doing your homework before you make a decision about a credit card and what kind of interest rate it has and fees and everything else that goes along with it. Just make sure that you're making good decisions.
All right, as always, thanks for the update. We'll see you next month. And they still won't be, they'll be heading back to school at this time. All right, Fred Anton, Gene Barr, our business panel is coming up. We'll find out what's going on just over the hill in the state capitol. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit pacoalalliance.com.
Welcome back to the program. Our business panel, Fred Anton with the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, Gene Barr with the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. Actually, these two guys head those respective organizations. Gene, I'm going to start with you. This past week, Republican leaders in the House and the governor had a 4-hour meeting and pizza.
Correct.
Right?
And they didn't throw it at each other, apparently.
Right, Fred, they didn't throw it at each other?
4 hours, and all the main players were there, as I understand.
Were the Senate leaders there, too? I thought just the House leaders were there.
I'm not sure. I think
that's
I'd be surprised if they weren't, but I'm not sure.
Wolf was there.
Yeah, governor was there,
Correct.
right?
He was, yeah. So look,
that's important.
It seems to be one of the more collegial ones that they've had. This has been, very acrimonious period. I've been in Harrisburg 22 years. This has been one of the more acrimonious ones, one of the ones that has gotten more personal. This appeared to be that they're claiming they were making progress. I think the governor used the term, put the discussion between guardrails. That is, put some ends around it.
Let me ask this question. Does that mean, and I'll ask it for Fred, and then we'll come back. Does that mean each now better understands their respective positions? We're talking obviously about the budget, which as we tape this program is over 3 weeks or heading into 4 weeks. Do I got that right, guys? Mm-hmm. Without a debate. Fred, do they now understand each other better? Or did they always?
Here's what I understand. I understand they understand the spend side of the equation,
how much
or they're communicating more on the spend side. In other words, how much the Republicans are willing to spend and what the Wolf spending would actually get down to, how much it would be. Now, of course, the critical number is $1.4 billion. In other words, that is what is called the structural. Everybody seems to the structural deficit. Now, that is something that Wolf can genuinely say, if they don't close that gap, it's gimmickry. He says it's gimmickry. Now, there are, of course, a lot of issues to go way beyond that, and we can get into them.
Okay, well, let's start with them. Okay, they don't agree on the total spend. They're
about
$1.5 billion difference off. Am I got that about right? That's what I heard about.
Roughly, the governor wants to spend a significant amount more. Yes.
Okay, so let's just go through, and then I'll start with Gene, and we'll get to Fred. Give me one of the big issue differences right now.
Pension clearly is one.
Okay.
Pension clearly there's differences where the governor said he's moved a bit. Pension, which from our perspective is the biggest fiscal crisis facing the Commonwealth, needs to be addressed. And to be quite blunt, we think it needs more than simply borrowing, that is doing bonding. It needs significant reforms.
And the governor wants to do the bonds.
The governor wants to do the bonding. To his credit, he wants to look at the fees that are paid, which from our perspective is reasonable. When you look at the fees and the performance that has happened over the last 10 years, we're not sure, and we would agree with him that it doesn't quite match. But significant reforms are needed to bring that system more in line, make it more sustainable and more in line with what the bulk of taxpayers get.
All right, give me one. Give me one of the
I'm
differences.
going to give you the pensions. Again, I'm going to say Governor Wolf vetoed the Republican pension bill. Now, what Governor Wolf, and what he said was, it's pretty good, but it's not quite there yet. It doesn't have enough short-term savings. He should come forward with other proposals other than the two Gene mentioned, which don't do the trick, in my opinion. He should come forth with proposals like a 401k or a hybrid plan for new employees, which would save a significant amount of money over time. Now, that would go a long way toward improving the fiscal situation.
All right, here's a proposal that I hear, from sources in Harrisburg. 401k style for new employees in the pension system. And in return, the governor gets, let's say, a 2.5% or 3% tax on shale, right? A severance tax, it's called. And that money goes to education for the school subsidy. There's a difference now between $100 million in the Republican bill. They want more total spending. $100 million to school subsidy. Wolf proposal, Governor Wolf, $400 million. Does that construct look like a deal?
Clearly, the governor wants more money. He's targeting natural gas. He's targeting the industry because it's a convenient target. Let's be honest. It's been the target of these ads by the Democrat Governor Association. The reality is, with the current climate in the industry, with hundreds of layoffs announced in the last couple weeks, declining rig counts, et cetera, declining prices, it is highly unlikely to get at 2 or 3% a significant amount of money. We're just not going to get that amount of money. Right now, we've gotten $800+ million over the last 4 years out of the current impact tax. Levying more on that doesn't necessarily bring you anywhere close to what the governor would like to have.
But isn't the point, Fred, that each side has to give up?
Correct.
They're telling me we got to go to a break. We'll come back and I'll pursue this with Fred Anton and Gene Barr in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
We return with our business panel, Gene Barr and Fred Anton. All right, Fred, is this a deal? Shale tax for pension reform?
The shale situation has changed so much since the campaign. Prices for natural gas are down so much. And really, there's such a glut of natural gas in the Marcellus Shale region, and the only sources of demand are move the gas out of the region by infrastructure, which they don't have, or have manufacturers locate plants in Pennsylvania. Either one of those take a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think they can raise more than $250 million, if that, with any sort of reasonable.
But let's stay on this. I want to get to the effect of this, which we've talked about at the break. Look, if both sides don't have to give up something, you're saying that at least not in that area. But the fact is that Senator Corman, the majority leader of the Senate, has held that out as a carrot, if I understand him correctly. He said, we can't talk about new revenues. And then he mentioned at one point the shale tax without, pension reform, Gene.
Correct. That has to be the precursor for everything from the legislative perspective, and I think you can put liquor as 1A in order to make those changes, making changes to Pennsylvania's liquor system before anything is discussed. A number of members of the legislature have said broad-based is off the table. They can't take too many things off the table, but I think they acknowledge that the money, this kind of proposal to tax natural gas is not going to get you the money that you need. It simply won't.
All right. Now, Gene just raised an issue before we get to the effect of this about liquor privatization. We have done, you've been on this, we've been talking about this for years.
Since 1980.
Since
or 1930, maybe.
1930, since the new, okay, right. But here's the point.
Go ahead.
the governor says, let's do modernization. Republican leaders in the Senate, on the record in the past, have said modernization is a compromise. Keep the liquor store operation, but modernize, but privatize the retail outlets. Fred, is that an area of compromise?
It's not an area of compromise. It's an area of reality. It's happening right now. If the Republicans pass the type of liquor bill that eliminates the state stores, Wolf will veto it. They can't override the veto. They can't.
So doesn't that mean just do the retail side of it?
No, it's happening now.
I know, but expand it even more.
Beer and wine are moving.
So your point is they don't need to do it because they're doing it already.
They're doing it already.
Well, the beer certainly is. You're having more and more announcements down in the Southeast. Wawa just announced they're going to put their first beer in. It's going to require them to put in the 30, 32 seats.
But doesn't that make it difficult to do either? Because if you want to privatize it, but they're making more money, we're going to run out of time. I mean, no, they're making more money, and therefore, the more money they make and put into the coffers, it's harder to get rid of it, guys.
When beer and wine can be sold in the liquor or in the convenience stores, a lot of the problem will
You've actually seen the decline in the revenue. And look, let's be honest, a lot of the revenue is going to come in anyway because it's sales tax, Johnstown flood tax. And when you look at the amount of assets that are deployed in order to get the returns, it's not that high.
We have 2 minutes. I want to get on to this subject, and I'll start with you. Go ahead. You want to make
Here's how we're going to get out of this budget. The Republicans are going to run bills, individual bills, or try and override the governor's veto on individual items in the budget. In other words, the Republicans are going to take the line items and they're going to run individual
line items?
Individual line
that could
items.
Take until Christmas.
That's what they're going to do.
That is one option. They're going to, that's one possibility in order to do this.
We're getting some breaking news here. All right, how long can this go on? I mean, we've been talking about the effects of this on schools, on child services, on go ahead.
Look, I think you're going to have a lot of these social organizations, mental health and mental retardation. All these are going to start feeling the heat here in a couple of weeks. Schools can go in. A lot of the schools have reserves. They're going to be able to play that. Keep in mind, first year Rendell, we went into December. I think highly optimistically, end of August it gets resolved. It's not going to be resolved in the next few weeks. Then you're looking September, October.
Wow, Fred.
When the social agencies begin to complain, it will be resolved in one way or another. Money will flow to the social agencies, some sort of a compromise. I predict it will be quite minimal. I predict it'll be something in the area of $1.4 billion. That'll be the new money.
All right. I'm going to give you a question, one-word answer. Do they do this by mid-September?
No.
Yes.
Oh, I got you guys disagree. Well, when you come back next month, we'll sort this all out.
Right.
All right, thanks. All right, great update, by the way. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.